Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like.
Give me a break. If you look at the Canadians that are ready, that are eager, that are lining up to hand in their passports, have you ever heard that expression? Don't let the door hit you on the way out. How do you reconcile this with any shred of national pride? You know, you wave the maple leaf, you Instagram your Tim Hortons double-double, right? And then you turn around and say, well, maybe we should let Donald Trump annex us. But suddenly now everybody's ready to throw it all away because some failed steak salesman with a spray tan thinks that he can add Canada to his collection of golf courses. Come on. There's hypocrisy here at play. Make Canada great again. Give me a break. Canada's not perfect, and we got a lot to fix. And the next prime minister has their work cut out for them. Housing and healthcare and reconciliation and climate change. But you don't fix it by turning your back on everything that Canada has stood for.
With an isolationist United States, Canada, again, will be looking pretty good. Obviously, we have more than a century worth of both oil and gas. So doubling, maybe, when people stop burning it in the 2050s or 2060s, they'll still be using it for material.
The idea that we're going to double Alberta's oil production is a adorably delusional fantasy. Increasing our output by that much as global demand is rolling over. It's like saying 6 billion people in the world don't have digital connectivity. They're going to go get landlines. No, they're just going to go skip straight to cell phones. They're going to skip to the best available technology. And in the developing world, in the global south, where solar resources are just immense.
We're still talking about solar.
Can I please finish my comments and interrupt you? Thanks. Countries do not want to be spending precious currency reserves when they can grow their own energy at home.
I just don't understand this idea that government should be protecting capitalists from risking their capital in this country. If those companies wanted to take the risk, why would we stop them and worry about what demand they're going to have in 18 years? We want that construction, we want those royalties, we want those tax revenue now and those jobs.
The federal Liberals kind of started to go really left, and now you've lost that center group of people who are center right leaning like myself. The Conservative Party, I know the tent is big, but the tent is a little too big for my comfort level when you've got people who view a lot of really crazy things, kind of that Jordan Peterson rhetoric. They're forgetting that there's a large base that just wants us to have centrist policies that are going out there.
You have a wellspring to tap, and you have mobilized people who are angry. You see it with Donald Trump, you see it with Giorgia Meloni, you see it with Orban, you see what's happening in Austria. They just got a far-right chancellor. Like, it's happening everywhere because that anger has been channeled.
Those voters, they should be NDP voters, and now they're Poilievre voters. The Liberal Party made a big mistake by getting rid of Trudeau. He's very unpopular, but who are they going to put into place? A banker from London, Chrystia Freeland that nobody likes? Their only worst option. It's looking really grim for them. All this is great news for Poilievre and for Donald Trump.
What is going on? I'm astounded that we have a government in place right now that continually wants to push this coal issue when Albertans have made it so clear that they do not want new coal mines on the eastern slopes.
And the Premier, the Energy Minister, is saying they're trying to protect Alberta from getting sued, get our ass handed to us basically in court.
Only reason this lawsuit exists is because the flip-flopping the UCP has done on coal. Like, they've made these mistakes and now they want us to pay for them.
This is a hugely connected wildlife corridor, relatively intact, which we don't see very much anymore. It's important to wildlife as a habitat. It's important for species migrating and moving. It supplies our water. It has a lot of biodiversity within it. People love to recreate there. It's kind of the backbone of Alberta. Projects don't operate in isolation. They're operating while logging, oil and gas are happening. We have to think how the cumulative impacts of all development affect the landscape.
How can the UCP possibly justify lifting this coal mining moratorium?
Came down to lawsuits.
We will fight anybody over anything in court except for coal companies.
I don't think you can be a conservative government, go and pay billions and billions of dollars when we're fighting with a budget.
I think we're losing a lot more than you can put a price tag on by allowing coal.
Talk to the people in Crow's Nest Pass that just went through a referendum and voted in favor of having their coal product.
Look at the people who voted in that referendum.
The people that live there, Cheryl. Crazies on the left are screaming and putting lawn signs on their lawn, and I don't think Karen in Edmonton should be able to decide what happens in Crow's Nest Pass.
What? There are millions of people that will tap in some way, shape, or form to the water. There have been leaks prolonged for like 9 to 12 months or more, undetected or undealt with by the AER. Down the river, the folks of Athabasca and Fort Chipewyan First Nations are experiencing elevated cancer rates and the like. If you're the Premier, you say, I will fight any coal company tooth and nail to protect the headwaters of this beloved province
and be
for
expropriated.
We've been here for over 120 years. They're starting to piss us off. and we will fight him to the end.
They're manipulating the people of Alberta into thinking that this coal mining idea is a good one for the province. Brian's texted me, it's good news, Craig. Bullshit it is. It's horrible news for Alberta. I absolutely draw the line when people in any position are just completely full of shit. Why is Danielle so hell-bent with industry that she will put the desires of a foreign mining company ahead of Albertans?
A premier that said, we are going to fight these coal companies in court because that's what Albertans are telling us loud and clear. Would be a premier that would be on their way to another election win.
None of this has been thought through at all by those two individuals.
Somehow I have no faith that modernization is going to fix anything. I was pretty fond of the way it was when it was not so modern, when we just took care of our mountains and our water.
We are in an age right now of information warfare.
The U.S. Supreme Court has heard arguments and is expected to rule on a ban on the social media platform TikTok by the 19th of January.
People don't even realize TikTok isn't owned by an American company. People are not necessarily clear on how their data could be used and exploited. We are in an age right now of information warfare, whether it's misinformation, disinformation, stealing of data, and so few players at the top who own these platforms.
Hundreds of millions of daily users. They're essentially granting access to their microphone, their cameras, the data on their phone. Like, for sure, there's people that are making great incomes in the space of content creation. To have an entire app banned.
This is people's livelihood, whether you like their content or not. They put a lot of work into it behind the scenes. Someone on TikTok who's making millions, they're putting in tons of hours of work. This is analytics, this is research, this is accounting, this is all of those things put into one. So I feel for those people.
You don't see this every day. Canadian politician Charlie Angus absolutely blasts Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, you're a disgrace as a human being. You may have gotten the presidency, but you're a disgrace. You're a convicted felon. You're a pervert. You treat your allies with absolute disdain while you kiss up to Putin. We are your best neighbor. We are your best ally. We are your number one trading partner, but we won't break Donald because you think your grifter politics can push us around. We will continue to defend the international world order. We will continue to work with NATO. We will continue to work with Ukraine. I know this is a big diversion exercise for you to change this channels in the United States, but you're going to have to explain to the American people very quickly why you brought in so many grifters and crooks with you. The American people aren't going to put up with it, and the Canadian people, we will never put up with it. Anytime, Donald, anywhere, we will take you on.
This is a relay project. Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
John Hicks. What do we call what we just saw? For those that are for a lot of people that are hearing this on the podcast or they're watching this on YouTube after we record this, we do this live at 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern weekdays. But for those that are joining the live stream, they've just seen like a 5-minute pre-roll of Real Talk highlights for the very first time.
Good morning, Ryan.
Very well done. Where did you find the time to do this? I love it. That is a level up, my man. For people that are joining us, a lot of people are signing into the live stream.
Earlier.
Here's kind of a plug, and people want to be there first, and I love it. There's competition in the live chat, powered by Park Power. People want to be first to say good morning. And so typically, they've just been kind of watching the Real Talk microphone spin and spin and spin.
Yeah.
And so we're going to give the people a little bit more for about 5 minutes before each episode.
Yeah, kind of our best of shorts. You'll be viewing them every day. And yeah, people are just signing in earlier. So we'll get you in there earlier. You can start chatting. You can start discussing some of the topics of the month, of the day, of the year, things that are pertinent. And You're welcome.
I love this from PNC Bio, who's watching us live, I think from Ottawa, if I read the message correctly the other day. Sure appreciate our Ontario and our Eastern Canadian audience. Says, I never in my life thought I would say that Charlie Angus has me riled up for a fight, but there it is. The New Democrat MP just throwing absolute bombs on that Midas Touch podcast, that Midas Touch show, and we were sharing that clip. They were basically calling Donald Trump a pervert and saying anytime, anywhere, Canada's ready to fight. In just a second, we're going to check in with our pal Mo Amir, who's joining us this morning. He's the host of This is VANCOLOUR, that airs Thursdays at 9 Pacific on Check, but of course you can stream it anytime. Mo's on YouTube and all over social media, and quite frankly, we just like the cut of his jib. We like the way that Mo rolls, and so we're going to talk to him. This foreign interference report released yesterday. Much ado about nothing. I don't know. There's some takeaways that I think should be concerning for everybody, but it turns out there's no traitors in Parliament. So says the justice that was tasked with this.
Okay.
Well, everybody was kind of wondering because the Prime Minister, you remember Justin Trudeau said basically that he had information, to suggest that some Conservative MPs had been compromised. Mm-hmm. And then you had opposition MPs saying, well, it's not just Conservatives, Liberals have been compromised as well. And everybody's going, what's India and China doing to impact or influence or control the outcome of our elections? It's the type of thing that give people the jitters when you're talking about the strength or the health of a democracy. So the findings of that foreign interference report were released just a short time after we talked to Federal Minister Jonathan Wilkinson yesterday, the Energy Minister, about his meeting with Danielle Smith. He gave us kind of general takeaways, but if you haven't read the report, what good is it? So we'll dive into that today, plus more of the stories that are making news. First, we got to let you know this episode is happening with the support of Business Career College. They've been in the business of financial training, online financial training, since the late 90s. Unbelievable. So a ton of experience here, and they've got a message in particular for senior finance professionals or financial planners that are facing more and more questions from their clients, and in particular kind of the next generation of clients, the ones that are basically kind of getting started now and maybe not looking at the retirement years. They're willing to take a little bit more risk. They're a little bit more bold. They're paying attention to what they see in the world around them, and they have questions about decentralized finance. That means things like crypto. That means like Bitcoin and the blockchain. They have questions about NFTs, and you want to be able to answer them with authority, with knowledge. It's why you need the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation from Business Career College. You can find it online at businesscareercollege.com. That's the CDAA, Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation. If you use the promo code Ryan20, they'll knock 20% off the investment you make in the CDAA designation. That's Ryan20, all one word, at businesscareercollege.com. Denis is watching us on YouTube. He says, how many of those shorts that Johnny just showed back to back to back to back? And if you're watching or listening later, basically on our YouTube channel, you can watch all of our shorts nicely organized back to back to back if you want. But Denis says, how many of those shorts identified a positive policy by the provincial government? Yeah, I guess it depends on who you ask, but Denis, fair point right now. The provincial government in Alberta, in our home province, embattled right now, is that the word to use? Danielle Smith's been enjoying a run of popularity, but the moves that they've been making on coal are quite frankly mind-boggling, and we've been covering those over the past few days, and you can let us know what you think the entire time. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. Of course, hit us up in the live chat during the show. Diane says, Charlie Angus is a national treasure. Wise Kyle says Charlie Angus is the weirdo from Timmins. He retired because he's going to lose his seat. Number one, I don't know if he'd lose his seat. Number two, I think Charlie Angus loves being called a weirdo. Doesn't he, Mo Amir? Charlie Angus is like the rock and roller. He's like rock and roll first, Parliament second. He doesn't give a shit. Hey, nice coffee mug.
Forget Charlie Angus. Look at this mug. This is all I wanted for Christmas. You delivered, Ryan. Good morning.
Hey,
Jespo
good morning.
and Momo in the morning.
Yeah, that's right. Well, listen, you gave us crap last time you were on that we had not sent you. You said Charles Adler has his snapback hat and wears my Real Talk merch.
Just call it like it is. I bullied you, Ryan. I bullied you into sending me a care package. It was beautiful. Thank you to your entire team over there.
Yeah, well,
for putting that together.
Katie deserves the credit, our general manager, who had that like shipped. And to you, I got a text from you, and I was thinking, wasn't this amid or maybe just after a Canada Post strike? I was like, I don't know how we got that to you in 3 days.
It was hand delivered. You hired someone to hand deliver it to me.
This is us doing what we can.
I was very impressed.
We're doing what we can for interprovincial trade. So we had to get Real Talk
breaking down barriers
from Alberta out to BC. Well, listen, our friends that work as influencers, and everybody knows an influencer in their lives, they always get to do, and I've always been a little bit jealous of this because it never really fits our format or what we do, but they get to do these unboxings, which are really exciting. Have you ever watched an unboxing like on TikTok or Instagram?
I have. Yeah, they are very exciting.
Somebody's been waiting for something for a really long time, and then they invite their audience or their followers in as they unbox it. Well, wouldn't you look at this as members of the Mutual Admiration Society? What arrived at my house the other day, Mo?
Oh,
but this flat.
What could that be?
Well, I saw the address on the back, and I got pretty excited. By the way, you have architects printing. If you're the one that printed this, I won't show it because it's all of our personal information, but your printing is absolutely impeccable. But I was pretty excited, so I thought and I knew that you were coming on the show, and I thought, well, I kind of want to do the unboxing live on the air, and so here we are.
I hope it survived.
Well, tell us. So there's a lot in here. Tell us what are we getting out here, because it looks like there's enough to share too. You've looked after. It looks like you've looked after Johnny Infamous too. Is this official?
Well, this is VANCOLOUR doesn't have the same array of swag that Real Talk has, but we have very nice
Johnny,
mugs. So it's 4 mugs for you and your entire team over there.
Oh my gosh, Johnny, is it too dangerous if I throw one of these over to you? Can we do that? Can we throw a mug? Okay, here we go. Trust me.
Hold on.
Okay, trust me. Here we go.
Oh
wow! Mugs for the whole team, Mo. This is amazing. Can people can Real Talkers? I know that every time you're on, people get really excited. By the way, we had announced you were joining us on Tuesday. Wilkinson could only do Tuesday. Thanks for your flexibility in bumping. But a few people yesterday were like, "Where's Mo? You said Mo is so people get excited." Can people buy these VANCOLOUR mugs, or do you sell your merch online?
No, they cannot. I pushed check to put them in their merch store, but they have yet to be there. I get lots of requests. There are a limited number, so only very special people get them.
Wow!
But maybe we'll open it up to the public sometime soon.
This is something Johnny and I have been talking about as well. Is these lapel pins? It's like the kids. Anybody
love it.
Anybody with the Canadian tuxedo? I feel like any good denim coat's got to have like at least 1 or 2 solid lapel pins, and so we'll rock yours here.
And enamel, you got to get that nice enamel pin.
You invested. You shopped local, didn't you? I can tell. I love it. Hey, well, listen, we're excited to have you hanging out here. Thanks for the new coffee mugs. New Mug Day is exciting,
course,
and you
my
can know
pleasure.
that yours will be proudly featured here in the Real Talk studio with guests, powerful and influential people that come join us. Why don't we jump into this foreign interference report? I mean, it's basically just for perspective. You and I can take a look at it. I don't think. Well, listen, I mean, I never want to be somebody that just laps up what we're fed, but for all intents and purposes, the justice on this one, Justice Hogue basically says, amid all of the controversy, amid all the bombs that were being thrown back and forth between the Liberals and the Conservatives after a robust investigation, it's proven that there was some attempted interference, that's for sure, but Canadian politicians, for the most part, weren't compromised. Here's a portion of what the Justice had to say with the release of the report on the 29th.
The government has the primary responsibility for ensuring national security and protecting our democratic institutions. But what I have read and heard convinces me that society as a whole must contribute to defending these institutions if we want to ensure their survival. Foreign actors are no longer content to use traditional means to interfere. They are also using sophisticated technological means and increasingly sowing disinformation in traditional media, but above all, on social media. Distinguishing what is true from what is false is becoming increasingly difficult, and the consequences are, in my view, extraordinarily harmful. The impact of traditional methods should not be underestimated, but the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation. This threat is all the more nefarious because the means available to counter it are limited and very difficult to implement. Nevertheless, we must not give up, but rather attack it forcefully altogether. This cannot be the sole purview of government. It will not work.
Okay, so that's Justice Marie-Josee Hogue confirming what I think a lot of folks have suspected for years and what has been confirmed basically by party leaders, which is that foreign powers, China, India, and others have been trying to meddle in Canadian democracy. The good news, I guess, generally speaking, the reports rule or find that the efforts didn't exactly change the outcome of our most recent couple of federal elections, but they do show, the report does find that the Liberals or security agencies dragged their feet a little bit on doing anything about it. The disinformation point is pretty interesting and one that I think is very real. You don't have to be eyeballs deep in politics. You don't have to be nerding out over Hansard or paying attention every single minute in the House of Commons to be aware of the fact that not everybody is consuming the same information, and a lot of it is just patently false and having a real impact on how people view politics and how people live their everyday lives.
Absolutely. And I think it becomes particularly concerning when you have certain politicians that ride on the waves of that disinformation. And again, they might not be spreading it verbatim, but then, they speak in broad terms that hints to a lot of that disinformation. And we see a lot of that. And I respect the commission and I respect Justice Hogue for all the work that they did. I think clearly there was a lot of thought put into it. But at the same time, by focusing on sort of the disinformation angle, we are ignoring the sort of core reason of why we had this commission, which was, are our elected officials in Ottawa compromised with foreign interference? Now, Justice Hogue did say that some parliamentarians may have unknowingly benefited from foreign interference. Some may have exercised very poor judgment and had relationships that are perhaps inappropriate in terms of holding up the integrity of their sworn oath to represent this country. And so I would like to see more of a focus on that end. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a Sam Cooper guy. And if you haven't checked out Sam Cooper, you could check out his work at the Bureau. I would recommend anyone to add it to their media diet. And he this morning put out, some very interesting reporting about how certain diaspora groups, both from the Hong Kong community and then the Uyghur community, actually withdrew their participation in the commission because they didn't think the scope was correctly. I don't want to misquote Sam there, so I would check out his work there directly. And so I think there are a lot of questions here. There's a lot of questions of, okay, if MPs are exercising poor judgment, well, what can be done to train them or to provide them with resources to avoid exercising that poor judgment, even if it is unwitting? So, by saying that disinformation is a threat, absolutely. And I think that is a collective problem that any federal government, regardless of the party in charge, will have to deal with. But I would like to look at some of the recommendations based directly at MPs and our elected officials and even government bureaucrats in terms of how to immunize themselves as best as possible from things like foreign interference, which we know is a thing. It's real.
Oh yeah, this can, like, if there's anything that's absolutely 100% confirmed, is that it is a thing and it is real. So people can acknowledge that. Although I do feel like most people, like, what do you think? Like, this is anecdotal, but I got the sense that most people knew that there had been some shenanigans, that people wanted the names released because they wanted to know which parties they were, which MPs they were, which potentially cabinet ministers, their official opposition critics, right? Ytrium is in our live chat right now, powered by Park Power, says, I would still like to have the names given and level of involvement. I'm kind of on two minds on that. Number one, if it's unwitting or if there was attempts but they weren't compromised. I mean, I don't know. On one hand, if you're a politician, unwitting or otherwise, that managed to dodge a bullet and did the right thing, you would love to have your name released. If you're a politician that comes across as a little bit naive, a little bit reckless, I mean, I think back, it's not the same thing, but remember Maxime Bernier leaving like sensitive documents when he was a Harper cabinet minister at his girlfriend's house, and she like ran with the Hells Angels, and there was like, do you remember one? And it was just like, when you saw that story, it's like people are going to remember that about Maxime Bernier for like the rest of his career when you end up with egg on your face.
And I think if it was negligence or poor judgment, like I do think that Canadians deserve a right to know. And I think when you're in that position of power, especially when you're elected by the people of Canada, you have certain responsibilities and you have to be accountable for all of your actions. So even if you are not, quote unquote, a traitor, but if you unwittingly enabled foreign, bad faith foreign actors, I think the public absolutely has a right to know. On this sort of topic, one of the things that I found interesting was one of the recommendations was talking about how party leaders need to get their security clearances. And again, it raises questions why Pierre Poilievre has yet to do that. And if this is a file that he takes seriously, then, is he going to act on that recommendation right away? Because the recommendation was, as soon as you become a party leader, you need to get those clearances and apply for them immediately. So I would like him to advise the public why he hasn't and when he plans to do that.
Yeah, the whole security clearance thing is a weird one because from his perspective, from Mr. Poilievre's perspective, he's telling Canadians, if I get my security clearance and I start getting briefed on all of these matters, then I can't publicly comment on them and I can't hold the government accountable. It seems like a bit of an eye roller to me. At some point, like when you want to be prime minister, he's already started walking like the PM. He's already started talking like a PM, or doing his best, right? The image overhaul, the sort of like dramatic evolution of his leadership, et cetera, et cetera. At some point, you're going to have to get clearance, and at some point, opposition calls for it and media calls for it, although there aren't as many as you might suspect. He's going to have to do it.
Is ignorance is bliss? Like, is that really an excuse not to do?
But you want to be the
job?
prime minister? I mean, I think at some point you got to do it. So it does put like, although it doesn't necessarily 100% like implicate the PMO or Justin Trudeau in anything. It is unflattering in the sense that it implies, it shows that the Liberals and that the Prime Minister's office were relatively slow to act on this. And you have to assume that for Pierre Poilievre, that'll kind of be the attack point, right? Like headed to the polls in 2025. You get the sense he's probably sharpening his knives on this, right? Accusing Trudeau or the Liberals, because it'll be Carney or it'll be Freeland or somebody else, of being basically weak on foreign interference, right? Cozying up to China, hammering them on national security. But Poilievre's also going to have to come up with a plan on his own. Like, what would he have done differently? What will he do differently now that it's all over Canadians' radar?
Yeah, and we'll see how he navigates this. I know that in 2021, certainly Aaron O'Toole was pushing this quite heavily and turned off a lot of, again, diaspora communities and how we went about it. I think Aaron O'Toole is correct, and I think that was a really missed opportunity to have that conversation in this country back then. But I wonder how much the Conservative Party of Canada now fears retreading that path on something that, yes, Canadians do care about, but at the same time, there clearly are various different interests or even, ethnic communities that might take it the wrong way.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting comment here in our live chat. Glenna, watching us on YouTube, says Elon Musk has targeted Canada now as well, along with Germany and the States. He thinks that his ability to manipulate electronic counting machines, tabulating machines, is a good thing, and so does Trump. He essentially said so. Donald Trump did have some curious comments about Elon Musk and voting machines a couple of weeks ago. It was all over Elizabeth.
In fairness, Elon Musk is a Canadian citizen. I think that to put it in context, I'm not saying he's correct, but I'm just saying we can't put him as a foreign interferer.
Yeah, it's domestic interference. There you go. It's sounds it's
just disinformation.
It's just disinformation and domestic interference. Yeah. Elizabeth May had this on her radar. Rachel Gilmore interviewed well, I guess I was going to say the popular Green Party MP and on again, off again leader. I guess it depends on who you talk. Out in BC, is Elizabeth May universally popular, or is she polarizing like she is in Ottawa?
In certain communities, she is popular, I would say. Yeah.
But she's not at like Chip Wilson's Christmas party? Is that what you're saying?
No, nor do I think she's going to sell out Rogers Arena or, the Pacific Coliseum with a speech or anything.
You don't have the Greens pegged for the next official opposition? Well, here's what Elizabeth May said to Rachel Gilmore just a few hours ago.
Help address that issue, especially when it's an, as she said, existential threat to democracy.
Watching Elon Musk parade around the world as the new emperor of all, along with his buddy Donald Trump, I am deeply concerned for the next election. In Canada, I think Musk interfering in Germany's elections on the side of the far-right parties that want to play footsie with Nazis and say we don't have to feel guilty about our past on International Day of Holocaust Remembrance. This is pretty offensive stuff. Our solution in the Green Party is we as Canadians and our government should say there's no such thing as a platform. You're a publisher. And Meta and Twitter and X and all of them would have to abide by the jurisprudence of hundreds of years of a publisher's responsibility for what they publish. And the anonymous and rule-free world in which social media operates could end simply and quickly, but of course Parliament would have to be in session, to say, in Canada, we don't recognize something called a platform. You've invented this term for yourselves so that you can, as profiteering transnational corporations, interfere in our lives and harvest our lives to make money for yourselves, threatening our democracy, threatening our journalism. So you're publishers, and we're not going to censor what you publish, but if someone wants to sue you, you'll be responsible for the words you publish, regardless of whether it comes from a foreign bot or a Canadian citizen. The publisher's responsible for what they publish, and that would really clean up the sewer of social media.
It would lop social media off at the knees. It would murder social media. But it's a hell of a suggestion that she's making in a picture she's painting.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I in theory love the idea. I just think that if Canada went it alone in that pursuit, X and whichever other social media platform would just pull out of this market. We've seen that certainly with Meta and their approach to Canadian news, where you can't post Canadian news links or any news links on their platform. So these social media oligarchy, they have a lot of power over everyone. And I think X is a particularly interesting case because you have Elon Musk himself so prolific in his tweets and amplification of things that a lot of us can describe as misinformation or disinformation, and him very openly and directly intervening in politics, as he did with the last U.S. federal election, where it does become quite concerning that, he owns this platform or app or whatever you want to call it, and really wants to meddle in various different elections. So it's certainly concerning. I don't know exactly what Canada can do on its own effectively that wouldn't shut down the platform wholesale. But it is going to be something that I think for the next few years, especially now that all of the big tech platforms have aligned themselves with Donald Trump, it's going to be something that people have to be critical of. And again, as you and I are both on X, it's not, I love the site, but it has its flaws. And I think the best we can do is just try to be critical and critical in our reporting and in terms of what we amplify on sites like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like Johnny and I talk about this all the time, the different personalities of the different social media platforms, right? And how X is just so dramatically different than Instagram, which is dramatically different than TikTok. And not just on the content that's there and kind of the tone of the comments, but also how the sites self-regulate. You have more insight than me on but we lose, I don't know if I say a lot of content, but we lose what? We lose content on a weekly basis that's wiped from TikTok, right?
Mostly from TikTok. I feel like TikTok is like, I don't know, if I had to caricature them, TikTok is like the teenager who wants to dance and share things with their friends, but let's not say anything about drugs or sex and rock and roll to be cliche. And then Facebook walks in the room and is like, hey, guys, want to see some pictures of my breakfast and my baby that just was born? And then X bursts in and is like, fuck your family.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I don't care about, exactly.
They all have different things, but I don't know. I believe they were all started as a positive, right? To share, pictures, life experiences, connect with friends, but they've all turned into what is happening here with Elon, ways to push narratives and originally X was like a way to get news, and I really enjoyed that.
It's still,
but now you have to fact check everything yourself.
I think you're right on the personality traits. This is where I grind the axe. Cannabis companies are not allowed to advertise, Mo, and I think that I'm an investor in a privately owned LP, like a licensed producer, a grower in Alberta called Joy Botanicals, and my brother's the grow master there, and check this out. So if you follow us on Instagram, you'll notice you're not going to find us there anymore. Our Instagram account has been wiped by Instagram for the second time, which is obviously a huge deal for a business in a very bad way. So now we've started again. If anybody wants to show us some love on our new account, Joy Botanicals, all one word, JOI Botanicals. But like it just,
Ryan, you know what you need to do? I mean, in terms of personality traits, Instagram is the thirst trap. So you just need to open up that business account on Instagram and just post pictures of butts.
Yeah.
And have the store address there in case anyone's interested, but just pictures of butts and you're fine.
Yeah.
And you'll grow a big audience on Instagram.
Yeah. I've seen people do it very effectively. The thing is, though, Twitter still is very good at what it was very good at from the very beginning. I think of natural disasters in Japan, breaking news, right? Like the Hamas attacks on Israel, and then Israel's retaliation in Gaza, and like the real time reporting,
instant review of real life,
100%. And there have been instances, I'm not exaggerating, of people like trapped in rubble tweeting about it. Like so Twitter is or X is still very good, and I think very powerful, but also it feels to me like the most cesspool-ish of all of it. Although Facebook, we don't need to debate this and litigate it. Some of the Facebook comments are you get respectfully, there's more old timers on Facebook, and I think some of the comments on Facebook are just, I'm like, dude, you can't say that.
Well, it's crazy. I know that obviously Mark Zuckerberg announced that he was going to change some of the rules and the policing around what you can say and what you can't say. But then for him to go out and specifically say that, like, you can call LGBTQ people mentally ill, I found that very strange. Like, there's one thing to say, okay, we're just going to loosen up the content guidelines and restrictions, but then for him to like specifically go out and say, hey, you can say these things again, I thought was very strange. And so I'm not particularly optimistic about Facebook's content moderation or the types of comments you'll start seeing more of on Facebook either.
Well, we've got really an interesting thing happening here. I don't know if you saw in our neck of the woods in St. Albert over the weekend. It's like 3 clowns. It's 3 people. So part of me is like, do we talk about this? And You know exactly what I'm talking about. The guy giving the Sig Heil and like throwing out the Nazi salute and holding signs, deport them all, and import the third world, and then you got the third world's here and all this kind of stuff, and so we're talking to St. Albert's Mayor Kathy Heron about it. She's obviously very troubled for her community, but like we posted it and we posted just a sort of a shortened discussion on it. People can check it out on YouTube, or my one on X is the one that really took off. Johnny, it was interesting. I'll show that in a second, but one of the comments in there. Somebody says, as deplorable as this is, or as troubling as this is, the truth is this speech deserves to be protected just like everybody else's. I was just kind of like, huh? I mean, is deport them all hate speech? Like, that's kind of is that a gray area? And I want to ask you the question, not leave it rhetorically. I think we put that on our Spotify poll yesterday, didn't we, Johnny? Asking, like, is deport them all does it qualify as hate speech? Like, in other words, should people be charged? Is it like threatening and inappropriate and kind of anti-community? Sure. But in Canada and in a free world, you don't get thrown in jail for an anti-community spirit or for expressing an unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
What did the poll state?
Is the anti-immigrant demonstration in St. Alberta a hate crime? Yes, no, unsure. So early returns showing yes, with about 75%.
75% people said that according to them, it's a hate crime. What, Mo? What's your take on this? Like, number one, what do you do if you're driving in your neighborhood and you see 3 people doing that, holding signs like that, throwing out the Nazi salute, waving the Iron Cross flag on the corner. What's your move?
I'm probably honking and flipping the bird, I think, at that point, to be completely honest. Yeah, I mean, is it hate speech? It's a good question. Is the Sing Hail gesture, is that hate speech? I mean, these are all, I would agree that it's kind of a gray area in terms of your freedom of expression. I absolutely think it's deplorable and it's gross. And there's a reason why, again, they're masked, because they don't want people to know who they are, which shows, just how brave these people are, quote unquote. I would err on the side that it is a gray area, and we have to be very clear of what the rules are. I think if someone is walking by and you're yelling those things in their face, and let's say they are clearly from an ethnic community or an immigrant or a Jewish person, and you're doing the gesture, then absolutely that should be a hate crime. If you're just standing there and not directly engaging with someone, even as deplorable as it is, is that a hate crime? I don't know. I don't think so, to be honest.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's gross and deplorable, but it just becomes a very slippery slope of how we prosecute this. So again, I think if it kind of treads into that area of harassment, you're clearly harassing someone directly who cannot get away from you. I'm more inclined to say, yeah, go ahead and prosecute that as a hate crime.
Yeah, it was King Air Daddy that follows us. Appreciate that on our Real Talk Instagram account at Real Talk RJ. There's like 200 comments there. I encourage people to go have their say. Says, unfortunately, even this type of speech should be protected. It's a double-edged sword. And the comment sort of started a conversation of its own. There's a lot of people also just saying punch a Nazi, which I don't necessarily 100% disagree with. Johnny and I both agreed very quickly this is not the type of scenario you pull over at to go try to reason with them.
Yeah, I don't know about a busy street the middle of the day, but I think most people, and I was looking at some of the reactions on the news stories. I watched like 3 different news stories on 3 different channels last night, and they all said the same thing, which I would have done as well. Is just, you're kind of flabbergasted if you go by and drive by this. The majority of people rolled down their window and said shame or whatever, but you don't want to get out and confront people on the street.
And a shout out to the ladies, by the way. A shout out to those that there were community members that showed up on the same corner the next day with signs that were, what did they say again? Like, diversity is our strength, and we welcome new Canadians, and like, whatever, signs along those lines. Just welcoming,
awesome.
supportive signs, which I was talking about this with my wife, with Carrie, and that really resonated with her. She said, like, these are people's days. Like, people are busy. People have other things going on. They have family and work commitments. For people to actually not just say, you know what someone should do is go out there. Yeah, Johnny's showing us the photo. Love thy neighbor. I value diversity. And thank you, immigrants, for strengthening our communities. Like, people took their time to make the signs, to go stand out there and to send a message. And like, we do these positive reflections every Monday on the show, presented by Kubi Energy. And I want to always make sure the show is focusing on that as well. Like, it's not all damnation and hellfire and like the world going to hell in a handbasket all the time.
Well, I mean, 2 things can be true at once. The world can be going to hell in a handbasket, and the majority of us are generally good people. I think those 2 things can absolutely be true.
We're hanging out.
But I do think that, again, to that larger point, yes, I think there are more people who see unity and community and diversity as wonderful things, and they're working towards that even in their small circles, than people who really do want to divide us, especially on these metrics of race and whether you're a first-generation immigrant or your family's been here for a long time.
And I'm not trying to give everybody a pass. Like, I'm not just saying ignore it. I'm not saying let it pass. I'm not saying don't address it. I'm not saying don't clap back. I just think it's important. Part of me, I'm trying to bring my thought process publicly and put it on the record to say when we're even deciding whether or not we talk about it. And ultimately, to be honest with you, Mo, a lot of times it's our live chat that'll be like, you better be talking about this, and so we'll talk about it. But part of me there's part of me too.
You just get bullied from all angles.
Well,
you get bullied from your
there's
guests, you get bullied from the
you know what we call it from our live tuning audience. We call it accountability. Accountabilitying. But part of me, the truth is also that it's 3 clowns. It's 3
clowns. Everybody had 3 clowns in their high school. Everybody has 3 clowns somewhere that they know that you would never take seriously for a second, that may have mental health issues, that may be drunk on Busch Light at like 11 in the morning, that may just have always been deplorables, and this is what they're up to this week, empowered by whatever it is, Donald Trump or whatever else it is. They decided to go out and do this. I mean, people are talking about, in the comments, like even on Instagram, there was one here that said something like, Drew on our Instagram says, if you're here illegally, your visa has run out and you're committing crimes, you need to go. Like, that sounds an awful lot like Donald Trump. That doesn't sound like something that Canadians are. I'm not saying we don't have issues with immigration. I'm not saying we don't have issues with violent crime. I'm not Pollyanna rose-colored glasses type thing, but that sure sounds a lot like Trump talking points right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Donald Trump, one of the most effective things he's done is completely change the political culture and how politics in general are discussed. And you see that in comments like that, things that may even not necessarily be directly applicable to our country. You still see some of the same talking points. And that's part of his legacy. And I think he's done that very effectively, as much as I hate it. And now he's working on really changing the global world order as well. And he's got a lot of powerful people with Elon and the other tech oligarchs in his corner. So it's again, hell in a handbasket, man. I think I'm not super optimistic about where we're headed on several different fronts in our culture.
Yeah, I want more on Donald Trump and tariffs with you in just a sec, Mo, because you and I talked about this when we last connected in December. In a way, you called it, or at least you predicted what we'd be hearing from 47. More with Mo Amir in just a second. By the way, we do have Dubious in our live chat here, says, I'll take a half-o of the Jespo Kush. I've been trying to get Joy. I've been trying to get Joy to name a strain after me, but for whatever reason, I don't think they want the attention. But I like our purple punch mints. If you're looking for my personal recommendation, Dubious. I would also like to point out that Mo, this is so embarrassing. I have been calling Dubious Doobie is, because that's how it's spelled, for like 2 years. And
wow.
Johnny, you finally straightened me out.
Dubious.
It's dubious.
Yeah, but it's a play on words.
But it's a play on words. And now I can't see it any other way. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So Dubious as presented by Infamous.
Yeah. Just to our listeners, there are no illegal quantities of marijuana in the studio. Elected officials in here with
Are you saying no illegal or no legal?
You know what I mean.
We have more dope in here than any other podcast in Canada. I guarantee you that.
Stop what you're saying.
What other podcast has water bongs locked and loaded? I don't think any of them, and still get all the power players to come on in. You remember when Mark Messier came in here during the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I also remember.
And all the Spit and Chicklets boys, Mo, or all the Spit and Chicklets boys are up in there, and Mark Messier maybe on. Well, he's probably not quite on the Mount Rushmore of the NHL, but if he's on the top 10,
absolutely,
and he walks in here and he just goes, smells great.
And then he's like, I'll take a tequila and a power bar. I was like, that's a good mix.
A tequila and a power bar. So that's what we gave him. That's what you get.
I need to make a trip out there. I need to do this in person.
Get out here in studio.
You're making me jealous.
We want to get, we'll get our correspondents from across the country to come join us and do an in-studio roundtable. It can be like you and Quick Dick and maybe Rachel Gilmore. She'd make it interesting as well. Hey, Mo, stick around. You still have a few minutes for us?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's still like nobody's even awake in BC yet. Mo Amir is talking to us at 8:10 Pacific time, which is awesome. For those of you that are watching this later, as you're kind of cruising around and scanning your screens and surfing online, want to encourage you to check out EdmontonOpera.com. This is super exciting. Your chance to experience in February the power of love and memory in Bluebeard's Castle. This is, for anybody who's seen it, a profoundly moving opera from the Theatre of Sound in London. This is Judith's journey highlighted through Bluebeard's doors. It becomes a poignant exploration of dementia, of identity, and the heart. This is directed by Daisy Evans, featuring a new English libretto, music arranged by Stephen Higgins, a story that is guaranteed to resonate deeply with anybody touched by memory loss. Don't miss Bluebeard's Castle, February 1st, 4th, 6th, and 7th at the Jubilee Auditorium. You can get your tickets at EdmontonOpera.com.
Hey, this is the time of year where a lot of folks are paying close attention to their finances, and for a lot of successful Canadian families, the desire to help your kids crack that housing market, to get their foot in the door, is a serious and important goal. I don't have to tell you that. With the release of the first home savings account in 2023, a lot of young savers are using this new account instead of an RRSP or a TFSA in pursuit of their down payment of their first home. If this is talking your language, I want to direct you to North Road Investment Council. You can find them online at northroadic.com or under the sponsors link on our website. You can learn more about that first home savings account, how it could factor into your family's wealth management. And of course, don't forget to ask them as well about their digital risk advisory. Nobody else in the space is doing that. Fascinating stuff from North Road Investment Council. Johnny, I told you I was attending a very special dinner last night. A chance to go visit a friend's parents in memory of him on his birthday. And so I didn't want to blow the dinner. I was in charge of bringing the food. I swung by Friesen Brothers in the West End. You know, I talk a lot to you about their kitchen, their takeout, the Friesen Brothers offerings that are hot and ready to go. Oh my gosh, did they ever deliver. I went with the braised beef short ribs. I went with the pork ribs. I went with a couple of half rotisserie chickens, that warm potato salad, roasted beets, dinner rolls. Oh my gosh, it was unbelievable. All for $100, fed 6 people and a ton of leftovers. Unbelievable value at Friesen Brothers. You can find them in 16 different Alberta communities or online at friesen.com. And we want to give a big shout out to the game changers at California Closets, the absolute best at what they do. That's custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. If you are absolutely set, hey, Mo did a show on this. You know, 80% of people abandon their New Year's resolutions by the end of January. We're going to ask him about that in just a bit. If you're the 20%, if you're the one sticking to it, gosh darn it, and your resolution is to get organized, to get decluttered, it all starts with a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. I love how they have the different levels of installs based on your budget. You can learn more about those custom designs on their websites. That, again, is californiaclosets.ca. Mo, that was that was an interesting show you did. I love this one where you guys were you were talking to Mandy Gill on the 24th, just about a week ago, less than a week ago, on why 80% of people fail their New Year's goal by the end of January. It's like no wonder a lot of people don't take the resolutions seriously. 80% fail in 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, there's several reasons for that, right? I think the first is by setting this kind of arbitrary date of January 1st, you put on a lot of pressure. And in doing so, a lot of people just are not organized in terms of, well, how are you going to accomplish that goal? So they think about kind of the end goal and the end result that they want, but they don't necessarily plan out their day or week in terms of the process of how they're going to get there. So committing your time, blocking out time in your schedule, treating it like you would a doctor's appointment, let's say if it's to get fit or to read more or whatever, that's one of the keys. And then the other key that Mandy brought up was that committing yourself to a larger cause, attaching your goal to, I have to do this for this person or this cause, or once I'm able to accomplish, if I read 20 books, then I'm going to donate this money to this organization, and kind of having that sense of personal accountability, but then also the accountability of telling other people of like, hey, I need you to help me, like obviously your friends and family, I need you to help me to keep me on track. And those are really the 3 big things that I think people need to focus on, and generally do not when they set their New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, I'm always like a little bit hard on myself, and it comes on like, we're talking now on the 29th of January. So in a couple of days from now, I'll look at all the posts from everybody that did dry January, and they'll be like, it was worth it. I lost 14 pounds and my skin looks amazing, and I stopped snoring, and I've been sleeping better, and all this, and I'll just kind of look back and think, oh, I guess it wasn't that long. And same thing will happen.
Did you have a resolution though?
No, not really. Johnny and I talked about this. I didn't. I'm sort of like have a general resolution through the year for a couple of things around personal improvement, and I've been generally sticking to those.
But like just, cards on the table. I've been hosting several sort of big events through January, including the Chamber Ball for the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce last Saturday. We have our Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic coming up, presented by Molson Canadian this coming Saturday. And I'm just realistically, the dry January thing just didn't work very well.
You
with
got
my
to get
schedule.
liquored for those.
Well, I was at Jasper. I was at Jasper in January, and it's just sort of not the right time. Now, astute people will accurately say to us, it's never the right time. You got it. That's kind of what makes it a commitment. But I'm looking at this as a general health move, trend-wise, over the course of the year, to rule out a few days a week of drinking, to break a sweat, like Matthew McConaughey said, try to break a sweat every day. Sometimes it's just running back to my desk to grab something, but still to break a sweat every single day, and just to sort of, more generally speaking, try to have healthier relationships, healthier lifestyle. That's kind of the general sense. Everybody should have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's very similar to some of my resolutions. I actually started in December because I knew it was going to be more difficult.
Attaboy.
And my resolutions were basically, okay, let's get really consistent with working out, really time block it as opposed to just getting up and deciding whether I'm going to or not. So I've been very successful there. I've also added daily walks. So even on days where I'm not, lifting weights or on the spin bike or whatever, just getting a walk in for at least 45 minutes, as long as it's not pouring rain. I've given myself that one out, but if it's pouring rain, I don't have to do it. And then also, just eating better, because I do stay pretty active, but I just eat garbage all the time, or was eating garbage all the time. So, really planning out my meals and going back to batch cooking and that kind of thing. So, so far, so good. It's been 2 months, because I said I started in December. So
meal planning is the big one for people that are it's easy to just absolutely blow your budget. And I'm talking by a mile on Skip and Uber Eats and DoorDash, and it's actually we took a look at a monthly expenditure for our family on that, and I was like, we need to wise up a little bit. That's actually when you see the number, because it's one of the great improvements, right? If you look Facebook was kind of we don't need to drag back into social media, but Facebook was kind of this game changer in how people related and reconnected and communicated. It's hard to imagine life before social media. It really is. And it wasn't that long ago, right? It was 15, 16 years ago. Same with meal delivery, right? It used to be Chinese food and pizza. That was pretty much it. And now it's just the world is your oyster, man. If you want oysters, you could probably get them delivered.
You would force yourself to prepare something at home. You would look at what you have in the fridge and you would figure something out. And
leftovers.
Now it's I'll just order
100%.
Whatever, right? Yeah.
Rahul, in our live chat, powered by Park Power, is watching us live on X right now. What's up, Rahul? Says, deport them all. What is the cutoff year for considering somebody an immigrant versus a settler or colonialist? And that is a very fair question. If we're deporting everybody that can't trace their lineage back 10 generations here, I don't think that this is going to work out well for any of us, or most of us anyway. Yeah. Hey, you were talking Trump and tariffs. This was before he swore in, before he was inaugurated. Last time you and I hung out, and Mo, for the audience that didn't have a chance to check out Mo Amir's most recent appearance, kind of prognosticated a little bit on what he was expecting to hear from Donald Trump. And wouldn't you know, here's the president of the United States just a short time ago.
The United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of the United States. The income tax came in 1913. As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens.
So there he is, basically to enrich our citizens. Canadians ask, at what cost?
Yeah, and I think a lot of Canadian media, and I would even say some Canadian politicians, have gotten Donald Trump's stance on tariffs all wrong. And this is what I said in the penultimate show of Real Talk for 2024, was that Trump sees tariffs as a way to generate income for the U.S. government. And anything in terms of costs or cost to businesses that happen because of tariffs are going to be offset by massive tax cuts. He already said he was going to bring in massive corporate tax cuts and income tax cuts. And as you showed in that clip yesterday, he's talking about removing the income tax altogether. So This is the strategy. This is the thinking. You think about who Trump is kind of admiring in terms of historical figures. He's talking about President McKinley. He just renamed a mountain in Alaska after McKinley.
Yeah.
And McKinley was a big protectionist that advocated for raising funds through protective measures like tariffs. This makes it very difficult to negotiate with the United States when it's really looking to kind of change the entire economic world order by being more protectionist. And by doing so, what Trump is doing is long term, he's trying to get companies to invest more in the United States in terms of their manufacturing or their operations. But then I think even short term, when we think about investment, he's trying to suck up investment dollars by saying, hey, we have the lowest corporate tax rates in the entire world. So if you're an investor, whether it's TFSAs or RSPs, or you just trade individual stocks, you'll be looking at American companies and US equities in terms of where to put your money and where to get some high returns. And so this makes it really difficult, I think, for the Canadian government to lean on him and say, oh, well, your things are going to get more expensive. He knows that. Like, he's not for all of his faults, I don't think he's stupid necessarily in terms of how money works. So it makes it very difficult. And I think we're already kind of we're set back by the fact that we don't have a real prime minister, a real government right now. We're set back that we don't have a particularly united front when you have premiers talking on their own accord as opposed to, all towing one line. And again, I'm just very pessimistic about these whole negotiations. I hope I'm wrong, but it's one of those few instances where you find me and the food professor on the same page saying, these tariffs are coming. He knows what he's doing. This is an income generator. And I don't particularly know what the direction is that Canada should go in terms of negotiations.
Sylvain Charlebois. Sorry, go ahead, Mo. I stepped on your toes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one avenue is to micro negotiate and create relations with different U.S. governors and senators, particularly from red states that are reliant on Canada-U.S. trade. That might be one way to kind of influence Trump. I do think that Danielle Smith is in the wrong or anyone is in the wrong, including Pierre Poilievre, to say that certain things are off the table or that we're not going to say that we're not going to do this. Like, I do think that in terms of negotiation, everything needs to be on the table. Whether it moves forward or not, we can't be completely showing our hands and saying that, well, okay, we'll try to negotiate for this commodity or that commodity.
You mentioned the food professor, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. We've had him on the show several times through the years. And, obviously an academic and I guess the criticism, and I didn't actually, to be honest with you, I was a little bit naive on this, didn't realize kind of how polarizing he was or how controversial he was. I guess the big accusation is that he's kind of in the pocket of big grocery, right? Where did you find the common ground with Charlebois? I'm just curious to follow up on that.
Oh, he was just saying that the Trump tariffs are a way to reshape the global economic order.
Yeah.
And he was just saying that even if we impose retaliatory tariffs, Trump's just he's going to shrug it off. There are obviously some commodities that the United States needs, particularly things like critical minerals. China actually has a ban from exporting their critical minerals to the United States. So we're one of the main markets that could actually sell these things to the U.S. But again, I don't think Trump cares because he'll go back to those industries and say, sure, you're paying more on these imported inputs that you need, but I just gave you a huge corporate tax cut and your stock is at record high. So what more do you want?
Yeah.
And again, I think Canadians have been saying like, things are going to be more expensive in the U.S. as well. Trump knows that. He knows that temporarily they will be. And he also knows that perhaps in the short term, maybe medium term, the Canadian dollar will devalue as a result of mass tariffs as well. What that means is that for the United States, for U.S. importers, it's actually going to be cheaper for them to bring in Canadian goods, which offsets some of those tariff costs. This is, again, just a very big existential threat to Canadian industry. It reveals just how reliant we've been on the U.S. In terms of our own economy. And again, I'm just we're talking about hell in a handbasket. Like I'm just very pessimistic, and I do hope that I'm wrong, but I just feel like all the signs that we've got from Trump and a lot of the people that surround him indicate this. And literally yesterday, he said what I said he would say back in December.
Yeah, it's like this will be a flawed comparison or a flawed example, but it's like you look at it and you say Canada, and we took a dive into, if people want to check out our January 28th episode, we chatted with Natural Resource Energy Minister, Federal Minister Jonathan Wilkinson. He kind of gave us a peek behind the curtain. I asked him, what does he say to people that are sort of describe the feds as a lame duck government right now with Trudeau's resignation? Asked how are the Liberals in limbo negotiating with Donald Trump and the Americans, and he kind of took us into it. But it's easy, and we took a look at what Pierre Poilievre said in an interview with CTV as well. He kind of put forth his 3-point plan. What was it, Johnny? Number one, he wants to hit the Americans back with tariffs. Number two, he wants to drop taxes for Canadian businesses, which is, kind of a common conservative promise. But if it actually happens, who would really complain? And number three, remove interprovincial trade barriers, which, like I said, if Poilievre can get that done, unbelievable. Like that'd be good for the entire country, including, wineries in BC and craft brewers and I mean, don't even get me started on cannabis. And it doesn't all have to do with partying. I'm always referencing wine, beer, and weed, but like there's other things that Canadians do well as well. So
I would love to see your investment portfolio, Ryan, and see what you're invested in.
Well, I'll tell you what, the part of the portfolio that other people manage is growing healthy. And then there's the Bitcoin, which we're excited about, but I always tell real talkers, don't buy Bitcoin based on what I say, because if it goes to zero one day, you're going to hate me. But those that have it now probably don't hate me. And then there's the stuff I've managed myself through my iTrade account, and it's an absolute hot mess. It's a garbage fire. But you hit a home run on one of them. I'll tell you, I'll drop it right now, because this was years ago. A guy on a dive boat in Mexico that I met just out of the blue. We ended up being dive buddies as assigned by the dive master. Didn't know this guy from Adam. He was living in or near Sudbury. Just a young guy. Totally impressed me with his perspective on life and his ambition, and he's a miner. I said, "What?" He goes, "What do you do?" I go, "Host a talk show." He goes, "Interesting." I go, "What do you do?" He goes, "I'm a gold miner." I go, "That's more interesting." And then he goes, "Buddy, if you remember one thing," this was in like 2020, probably like 2016 or something. He goes, "If you remember one thing," he says, "buy Kirkland Lake gold." And I remembered it because of Costco, and I was like, "Okay, Kirkland Lake gold." And I went back and bought as much as I could afford at the time, and it just went whoa. So if anybody, I don't know if anybody, so Kirkland Lake gold. Although I'm sharing this with you now, after the ship has sailed potentially. People always say, like, if you're getting your investment advice from like gas stations and laundromats, it's too late. So if you're getting your investment advice on Real Talk, unless it's from North Road Investment Council, don't ever listen to the host, right? Don't ever listen to the host. But
and don't listen to me either. But I think for your viewers out there, something that they should really think about is this idea of, tough economic times ahead, a devalued Canadian currency, which will mean that our imported goods are much more expensive. And so let's say you've been, again, this is not financial advice, but hypothetically, if you've been saving for a big ticket item like a refrigerator or a car that you absolutely need, now might be the time to pull the trigger and actually buy something like that. You have to look after yourself in terms of your investments, in terms of your mortgage and your debts and all that other stuff. But I do think Canadians need to be very wary that the potential for, again, very tough economic times lay ahead. And I'm not necessarily convinced that it matters who's in charge of negotiating. I think Trump is absolutely going to go ahead with these tariffs, and as a country, we need to be ready for it.
Yeah, I don't mind your comment there that it doesn't matter who's doing the negotiating. You kind of get that certain sense. Obviously, the politicians will tell you that that's horse shit, but I think you might be right. You're dealing with such a unicorn in Trump, he just does politics so differently. Nothing's sacred. Nobody's safe. It's just hard to imagine. I like this comment here in the live chat. Who was it that said, this was F-Table watching on YouTube, says Alberta's moonshot project should be hydrogen. This is about 9 months ago. Let me get you the exact date. April the 5th. We did a show on the 100% hydrogen-fueled community. It's the first of its kind in Canada. Pretty interesting stuff. Just outside Edmonton, an entire community, Mo, 100% fueled by hydrogen. People can check out that episode if they want to learn more about that. The flawed example or the flawed comparison I wanted to put in front of you is suggesting, which is absolutely true, that Canadians are getting a reminder of like what happens when we don't put all of our eggs, but like a lot of our eggs in one basket trading with the Americans. And Pierre Poilievre and others have said that this is, obviously a reminder of the value of diversifying our export markets and removing some of the export barriers and the like, which is true. But also, like when the going's good, why wouldn't you put most of your eggs in that basket? And it's kind of sort of similar, maybe some flaws in the comparison, but kind of sort of similar to Alberta's economy, where we talk about the resource roller coaster and we talk about the highs and lows of global oil prices and surplus or deficit budgets. But then at the same time, it's like when oil's $105 a barrel or whatever it is, like why in the hell wouldn't you drill, baby, drill? From an economic standpoint, I understand why environmentalists would push back on that. But when the going is good, diversifying the economy is only smart in hindsight once the economy starts to falter, right? Once the golden goose stops laying the eggs.
No, that's absolutely correct. And I think that is actually a very good parallel. It's this idea of, well, if you're literally sitting beside the world's biggest consumable nation, why wouldn't you sell to them? Why, especially if it's easy to transport your goods and you can at a competitive price, why wouldn't you do that? If you have liquid gold coming out of the ground, why wouldn't you try to maximize returns? Certainly in a free private market. And so I completely understand how we got here, but it's just that risk that we never particularly thought of, that the neoliberal economic world order could change in a way that Trump wants, basically. And it hasn't changed completely, but it looks like it's heading that way. And Trump is certainly going to, again, using the word, bully other nations. We saw what he did with Colombia over the weekend, where they were rejecting the return of a couple of migrants who apparently were criminals. And, Trump said 25% tariffs, 50% tariffs next week. And they caved within 2 hours. Tariffs are no joke. They can absolutely damage an economy. And again, the way that Trump views them, perhaps retaliatory to some nations, but I think when it comes to Canada, he very much views it as an income generator in lieu of income taxes and corporate taxes.
Erica is watching us, or rather Alberta girl says Trump is not a unicorn. Says he's only enacting antiquated economics and pretending it's reinventing the wheel. I don't know. It seems to be working. I guess we'll see the tail of the tape at the end of the day. Hey, before we let you go, I got to ask you about this. Is this a non-story? Is this a story? Conservative Deputy Leader Melissa Lantsman and Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith. I'll show it on my screen here because it's kind of funny. This is just on Power and Politics. They were talking about it, and it'll loop and loop and loop there. This is a media scrum in Toronto, and Lantsman's in front of the mics, and Erskine-Smith, I guess, kind of like wants her to move, and they're kind of putting their hands on each other, and it caused a bit of a kerfuffle on Twitter. But they're both doing it with smile. They're kind of doing it with like "fuck you" smiles on their faces. It's kind of an interesting development.
I thought it was hilarious how people were freeze framing the interaction and like analyzing.
Yeah, we're doing it too.
How this happens, forgetting that this happens in real time and it happens really quickly. What I would say for Nathan Erskine-Smith is, I think he had the right to interrupt the press conference. He's literally being called out by Melissa Lantsman. And she's saying, like, will he answer this question? He's this and he's that, and he's right there. So I think he was well within his rights to kind of step in and intervene the way he did. Now, in terms of the touching and the hand on the back, and she put her hand on him and all this other stuff, it seemed like a pretty cordial interaction in that sense. I don't think Melissa Lantsman said in the moment or even right afterwards that she felt that he was being threatening by any means. And so, it was a little jousting there. I didn't think it was particularly inappropriate. It just comes, I don't know, the concerns ring really hollow from, this group that has rejected identity politics and the interpretations that sometimes the left have over certain incidences, saying that, oh, this was sexual harassment or this was completely inappropriate, when even the participant, Melissa Lantsman, didn't seem to say that it was. So I don't know. Like, it's a non-story, but I think the reactions have been just kind of fun to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah. Did you see what Pierre Poilievre said on International Holocaust Remembrance Day about Anthony Housefather? Did you see this quote? This is wild for people that didn't see this. This is Elias Makos reporting. Says Pierre Poilievre on International Day of Holocaust Remembrance about Jewish, basically Zionist MP Anthony Housefather, quote, "You vote for Anthony Housefather, you get the Hamas wing of the Liberal Party. That's what you get. They go together. They're a package deal. The good news is there's no Hamas wing in the Conservative Party. They know they're not welcome." Those are fighting words if I've ever seen them. Like, does that cross a line in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. That crosses a line. To say that, this Jewish and pretty, vocally Zionist MP is one and the same or part and parcel with Hamas supporters is just gross.
And the
awful.
Timing of it, too.
And the timing of it. I my political ideology, as I've told you before, is cynicism. And I think that oftentimes politicians are completely cynical when it comes to certain ethnic groups or religious groups or community groups. And that just proves it. The dunk on the Liberals was far more important to Pierre Poilievre in this case than was making a statement about a very solemn day to remember just a horrific thing that happened in world history. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I can say about it. It was gross. It was disgusting. I think it shows his own cynical mentality towards a lot of these issues. It is just about winning and dunking on the libs, as opposed to bringing people together and unifying this country. So I think politicians are fair game, but this type of conflation where you conflate someone with terrorist sympathizers or terrorist supporters, it's just gross and has no place. It should have no place in our political culture.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Mo Amir, a wonderful friend of the show, hosts This is VANCOLOUR on Check. We love Check, 100% employee-owned. Amazing content out of British Columbia. You can watch it at 9 p.m. Pacific on Thursday nights or stream it whenever at checknews.ca. We'll link to it in the show notes. You can find Mo, of course, on X, on Instagram, and every once in a while when we get lucky right here on Real Talk. Thanks again for the care package, pal. Very generous.
A pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. And I should say, I didn't say what was in your care package, but there was this. There was a box of matches. There were socks. It was incredible. You guys have incredible swag. Always a pleasure, and belated Happy New Year.
Yeah, belated Happy New Year to you as well, brother. Thanks for doing the show. Much love. That is Mo Amir, host of This is VANCOLOUR. And Johnny, of course, if you ever do want to get your hands on a Real Talk coffee mug, a snapback cap, T-shirts, vinyl stickers, whatever else, just check out RyanJesperson.com. Click on the merch link, and that's where you can place your order. And shipping is always free. Pretty cool stuff at RyanJesperson.com. I want to get into the live chat. I saw some folks talking about some of the things that you and I were kind of getting into with Pierre Poilievre. We did want to break in some of that, more of that interview he did with CTV Atlantic, because it was kind of a, you were saying kind of for the first time you felt like he was going on the record with some more tangible policy stuff and kind of giving the people a little bit more thoughts. I thought the Energy East pipeline, his comments on that were one that I thought might be of particular interest to this audience.
Yeah, he's still sprinkling in the slogans and stuff like that. I mean, he's still saying carbon tax Carney and carbon tax Christia and bring it home and common sense. But I think for the first time, and you can always tell he's a little annoyed with every interview that isn't, kind of, positive immediately towards him. Like the Peterson interview, he's relaxed, he's leaned back, he's on CTV and he's doing the thing where he asks a question back first. But I do feel like that was smaller parts of the interview. And we took 5 clips from this, and all of them, I think he answered very directly and is leaning more. And it's probably his team saying, let's start to give people an idea of what your policies actually might shape, form, and look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you have to at some point, right? I was on the Housefather comments by Poilievre. I was just like shocked when I saw that. I just think not even just the timing of it. I think just walking up to a Jewish person and accusing them of being a Hamas supporter is just about as gnarly as it gets right now. Cactus Sheriff in the live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, citing Hanlon's Razor, basically says, regarding those comments, never attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity and incompetence, says though that level of ignorance is often indistinguishable from malice. PNC Bio says the salute, the AFD speech, the tweet is getting very hard to ignore, talking about Elon Musk. That Germany comment, the Germany comments were, we didn't actually, when Mo brought it up, I didn't reference it, but there was this AFD rally in Germany. People can find it. If you Google it, you can watch his entire comments. But Elon Musk tells this rally in Germany, quote, I think there is too much focus on past guilt in Germany, and we need to move beyond that. Children should not feel guilty for the sins of their parents, their great-grandparents even. I wonder what he could be talking about. So no wonder, obviously, a lot of people were kind of struck by those comments. You can always let us know what you think. We do have the flamethrower coming up on our Friday episode of Real Talk. Of course, as we wrap up every single week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, your chance to get your hottest takes in front of the Real Talk audience. And that's going to be coming up, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Just a short time, by the way, before those same DQs show up in a big way, Johnny, at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. They're going to be serving the burgers out there, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. Coming up on Friday's show, by the way, as well, we're not wrapping right now, but I do just want to put it on your radar. We've got a kind of a tariff roundtable for you. February 1st is when the Trump administration says, and his commsar said it yesterday as well, basically, brace yourselves because February 1st is the plan. Jessica Murphy and Nadine Youssef have collaborated on an op-ed for the BBC, and they've both agreed to join us, which is great, remotely on Friday. So we're going to do a deep dive into tariffs basically on the eve of them kicking in. If you've had enough of politics talk, and if you're ready to just clear your mind and get out to the most magnificent spot in Canada, may we suggest Jasper National Park. Every single week, courtesy of our friends at Tourism Jasper, we have an opportunity to remind you of what lies in wait out there. And right now, we're really excited about this climbing tour that's happening. Have you heard about this? This is now obviously Moline Canyon was impacted by those wildfires in the summer, so there's not as much traffic out there as there normally would be, right? Like it's hindered for the right now. And so that's why the team at Rockaboo Mountain Adventures has come up with this amazing new attraction right in the heart of town, a brand new ice climbing wall in downtown Jasper. Johnny, I saw it earlier this month when they were getting it ready.
Yeah, the construction.
And you kind of coming together, and obviously you can only build it at a certain pace. This huge ice wall towers at 15 meters, like almost 50 feet tall. This is an absolutely one-of-a-kind artificial ice wall, so you can participate in a 90-minute climbing tour, which is super cool, guided obviously by their expert guides. This is a really new and unique adventure, no matter what level of previous climbing experience you may have. I mean, you could be an experienced ice climber, and I think this would be super fun, but also you could try it for the very first time. As long as you're aged 12 and over, this is perfect for people that are seeking a new challenge, maybe seasoned climbers looking for a fun workout, or anybody with an adventurous spirit. And what a great way to start before maybe moving on to the next stage in your ice climbing pursuit, which could be experiencing ice climbing on actual frozen waterfalls, right? This is all put together by Rockaboo Mountain Adventures. I know that is a team that is just doing the coolest stuff out in Jasper. You can find them on Instagram as well and see more videos and photos of the Jasper Ice Wall. You can learn more about their annual Jasper Ice Wall memberships. And if you are headed out to Jasper National Park, make sure you check out Tourism Jasper's website, an absolute wealth of information for the best restaurants out there, some of the different accommodation options. It's the cabin capital of Canada. Can't wait for this summer, and obviously we know that so many people are eager to get back out to Jasper and show some love by investing some of your family's tourism dollars, your travel dollars, your hospitality investments in the beautiful municipality, the town, and the surrounding area of Jasper. That's jasper.travel. All of this, of course, an amazing opportunity to make memories. MyJasper Memories, presented by Tourism Jasper, Wednesdays, right here on Real Talk. Should we get into that Energy East thing? I thought it was kind of interesting because a lot of people are talking right now about,
Sure.
Whether or not the new Trump administration might open up opportunities for new pipelines. Obviously, Canadians are looking at more export opportunities to get Alberta's energy to a global market. And Pierre Poilievre went on the record with this interview with Todd Battis. He's a host, an anchor at CTV Atlantic. We took a quick look at that interview yesterday, and we wanted to get into this as well. Obviously, there's a lot of people that have the resource economy on their radar. So Pierre Poilievre got into his thoughts on the possibility. Remember, this was investment. This was the company that killed Energy East based on obviously a number of different factors, but this was not government killing Energy East. That was not what happened here. Could government do something to pave the way, make the business landscape, the promise of returns a little more friendly for investors? This is what the now leader of the official opposition says on the record.
It's been brought up by Alberta Premier Daniel Smith and recently by Premier Tim Houston just this week, the idea of reviving Energy East. But industry has moved on. You know, Trans-Canada Pipeline, who was the big proponent behind it, it's basically gone.
They're TC. They took Canada out of their name.
Right. They don't.
They're in Texas now.
Yeah, and no one seems to be willing to take the risk. Is that project dead? And Quebec has said it would never go through Quebec, by the way.
Well, it's a shame that the Liberals killed that project.
Did the Liberals kill it, or did Trans-Canada kill it?
The Liberals killed it. TransCanada didn't put $1 billion into trying to get the project done just to throw up their hands and walk away. They were polite and stupid, but in reality, Trudeau killed Energy East.
Would you build it? Would you bring it back?
I would strongly support an east-west pipeline. That particular project probably won't be resuscitated, but the idea of selling Western oil to Eastern refineries is impeccable. And compared to the alternative is that we continue to sell at a discount in the West and buy at a premium in the East and lose money millions of times every single day. It's economic suicide and stupidity. And listen, you've got carbon tax Carney, who is opposed to pipelines. He opposed the Northern Gateway pipeline. You have Freeland, who helped Trudeau kill the Energy East pipeline. The radical woke environmental agenda is actually not good for the environment. It's only good to enrich the United States at Canada's expense. And by the way, it does a lot of good for Vladimir Putin as well.
So there you go. The assertion that the Liberals killed Energy East, and then basically, some fighting words. I thought it was kind of interesting that he appears also at the same time to be willing to denigrate and pick a fight with the pipeline company, which is kind of a weird flex for a conservative that wants to be a prime minister. But he's also promised in that interview to basically fast track. This is the kind of idea, the general sense around red tape reduction, right? Politicians will rarely I think fast track is a word that people get nervous about because it sort of sounds like the consultations aren't being done. And then, of course, ultimately a lot of these things like Northern Gateway wind up in front of the courts and end up getting killed as well. But in the context, I think this one's more specifically about mining. But Pierre Poilievre is promising that a conservative government's going to kind of cut the red tape on the big new energy or industry infrastructure projects. And here's what he says they'll do about it.
Premier Tim Houston said this week, he issued something of a vision for the province, and he said that it needs to be more self-reliant. And he would like to see mining, extraction of natural resources move quickly.
Yes.
Would you, if in government, change regulations or remove regulations for speedy approvals?
Yes, I will repeal the anti-development Liberal law C-69, under which it now takes an estimated 19 years to get a mine approved. So here we are with the 5th biggest supply of lithium in the world. We don't mine lithium. We have the 6th biggest supply of natural gas on planet Earth. We don't export a single cubic foot of it overseas. We have the most uranium, the most potash. The list goes on, but because our laws are designed to block projects from proceeding, businesses don't put their money here. We've lost $500 billion in net investment from Canada to the U.S. This is Canadian money building mines, pipelines, business centers, factories, with paying American workers with our money. I will bring it home. We will repeal C-69. My goal is to have the fastest permits for mines anywhere in the developed world.
So it's kind of interesting to see that conversation happening. I think a lot of people, obviously, the lithium opportunity that Canada has is big, and this will prompt more conversations on shows like this as we learn more the general public about it, about the economic potential about it, the employment implications of it, and also the environmental implications of it. Something people will be curious about. But kind of interesting storylines running parallel in the national news cycle this week. Conversation about the potential for more mining in Canada. Canada does have a rich and productive history in mining, obviously, and the story that's maybe leading the headlines or among the leading headlines in Alberta right now, which is the Alberta government reopening the eastern slopes to coal mining. A lot of talk about mining in Canada this week.
Which nobody wants, which, I go back to our poll on Spotify, it's like almost 100% of people are saying no. But who knows? Maybe there's some opportunities for mines in places that don't affect people's drinking water and stuff like that. And I'm open to exploring that. But at the very least, I'm happy that he's being transparent. He's saying, here are the things I want to do again. And I know he's said that before in interviews, but it was very cloudy. Now he's giving direct, especially this interview. I don't know, but maybe he had 2 coffees and he was just like, I'm going to raise the veil a little today.
I like it.
But he's giving specific things that he's going to do, and he did it 5 times in an interview. So I think his team is saying, or maybe it's his thinking is just, hey, we're getting closer here. We're already ahead in the polls. We need to now start engaging and letting people know what we're going to do. And I'm all for development in Canada and for looking at all these things, but you're right. We have to look at those 3 points you said. And number one, for a lot of people nowadays, even if you don't like it, if they live around these places, not only just because they're beautiful, they want to know that when they turn on their tap, the water's not going to be brown, that people aren't going to get cancer, that once you're done, you're going to clean up. That's a big one nowadays. And we were talking about this yesterday with the selenium. Some of the shit you're doing, you can't really clean it up. You can use these words like modernization and cleanup and reclamation, revival of the land. But some of these things, it only takes a quick Google search to see that, this selenium stuff, it never really goes away. You can't clean it up.
A shout out to Real Talker Will, who reached out to the show. He's got a really neat company called Dirty Dirt, and they do soil remediation. They do really well. And these are the guys that you call in if there's been a spill, but also sometimes if industry's been on a certain location that's going to be reinvented, like the site of a former gas station or the site of a former dry cleaning place. I guess old dry cleaning sites are really problematic for soil contamination. And anyway, so he reached out. He's like a regular listener. We sure appreciate you, Will. And he just gave us some insight. Pretty straightforward. He said that he loved Mayor Craig Snodgrass's takes on coal mining. Snodgrass, the mayor of High River, throwing bombs at the provincial government. But Will said, just from a scientific standpoint, he said just from a remediation standpoint, he's like, there is no solution to selenium. And he says if you have these collection ponds or whatever they're called, by these mines, and then he says, and then if you do get a flood, and if that is released into the Old Man watershed or wherever else, Will said that's like a permanent type problem. So pretty interesting to hear from Will. We always appreciate when real talkers with knowledge in a space are in touch with the show and let us know what they think or how the content is landing with them. Ken K, we see you in our live chat right now, says nobody wants mines. I think if you're a miner, you want mines. And sure. I think if you're a community, I think of Hinton, I think of Grand Cache, obviously Crow's Nest Pass, Elkford, Sparwood. There are communities in Western Canada, and obviously I mentioned Sudbury earlier. And I don't know as much about Ontario and that, but there's obviously a ton of mining in Northern Ontario, Manitoba. I think obviously those communities can rise or fall with the health of mining. Look at what happened in Grand Cache. I mean, the municipality basically. I'm going to use the wrong phrase here, but they kind of went bankrupt. The municipality of Grand Cache, it went from a town and was enveloped by the MD a number of years ago because of the economic health of that community, the economic illness of that community. Wonderful folks in Grand Cache. What a beautiful community you have. I've attended the death race, love Grand Cache, and it's really sad to see. But when an industry dips and a community is heavily dependent on the industry, obviously people in the Crow's Nest Pass are going to feel differently about coal mining if they work in coal mining.
Of course.
But if you're a fifth-generation cattle rancher, I mean, the short that you put together for us just a couple of days ago, people can see it on all of our socials. They're fuming mad. And these are, I don't know how these folks vote, but, you know, typically when I see a lot of people with cowboy hats, cowboy boots, and big belt buckles, you can kind of guess like they didn't vote for like the downtown urban elites. I'm saying that cynically, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a really, unfortunately, it's a divisive conversation, but it's an important one to have.
Just the words you're using, like the tailing ponds and these ponds, that collection ponds, like that word alone, I'm like, that doesn't give me a good visual of anything. Like, you know, people say all the time, people want mines, like, and most people don't, I don't think. Like, would you want to go fishing in a pond near one of those places afterwards? I don't think so.
I think of Aaron
You know what I
Brockovich.
mean?
Remember that scene in Aaron Brockovich when they're in the boardroom and like and the, you know, the industry guys are like, they're drinking the water, and then Brockovich says, Julia Roberts says,
"Oh, that's from the
and she goes, "Oh, by the way, we had this water brought in special for you," and they all like kind of like put the water down. I thought that was such a good scene. Hey, Poilievre's invoking the word woke. It's popping up again. It's a powerful word for politicians to invoke. Did you happen to see the debut briefing of the new White House press secretary?
Yes, and I thought we would avoid this on a nice JasperMemory Day, but I knew you were going to go to it. But
I'm not
first briefing.
She's 27, first of all. And I'm not saying that just is what it
Hey,
is. It's just interesting.
get it, girl.
Like, good for her.
Go.
Like, she's the youngest White House press secretary in American history.
Awesome.
She's 27 years old. Caroline Leavitt, and obviously you'll be hearing more about her on the show. But pretty interesting as she talks about children of migrants not subject to U.S. laws, and of course a lot of people were paying close attention to what she was saying about the American president, about Donald Trump's views on immigration. Legacy media and wokeness is kind of where she went. She talked about deporting criminals, and those that are on the White House beat basically said to her like is everybody is every undocumented immigrant or migrant an illegal? And she said, if you're here illegally, you've broken American law, therefore you're a criminal. And that's kind of how she lays it out. But she came down hard on quote, woke funding, saying there will be no more funding for illegal DEI programs, which I thought was interesting. Remember, we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion last week on the show, how some big corporations are walking away from it. She pointed to pausing federal assistance on certain grants and loans, citing transgenderism and wokeness across federal agencies. And she basically said that, American people are working hard. They want their dollars to actually matter to this administration. Criticized a pledge, which they blocked, to send $37 million, a drop in the bucket for the United States, to the World Health Organization, calling it a program, quote, to send condoms to Gaza, and a preposterous waste of taxpayer money. It was in reference to U.S. aid program that involves HIV prevention care. So throwing absolute bombs in her debut as White House press secretary.
I can't wait to see her debut this weekend on Saturday Night Live when
100%.
because this is going to happen right off the show opener. But
who's going to play her?
Who knows? But what I will say is, I'm going to avoid the transgender stuff because that's, I believe a lot of that is opinion, and we know how people's opinion is down in the States right now who support the Trump administration. So it's not even worth touching on. What I do want to touch on is, and we were just talking about this with Pierre, I want to hear from Trump and his team. They're talking about, first of all, they're saying 20 million illegal immigrants. And the numbers that we look at, the recent ones we have, it says it's about half that, 10 million, maybe another 2 million that are like scattered. But like, okay, 20 million illegal immigrants, and you're going to get them out of the country. How do you start going about that? Because in my mind, like, that's moving a lot of people. That I don't want to reference like the Holocaust and things like that, but how do you move millions of people out of a country? It's going to be taking them out of their home, putting them into camps before they're either. You can't put those people on a bus. It's got to be train loads of people. 10, 20 million people. The whole thing to me in my mind just seems really, tragedy is a weak word for it. It's going to be mind-numbing. It's going to be really shocking to the American public, especially to the people who right now are like, yes, if you're here illegally, get the fuck out, all that shit. I understand that if that's your opinion, but like, How do you physically do it? Like, these are human beings.
They're doing it, though.
These
I mean,
are
you're
people,
looking,
man.
You're watching. I mean,
Like-
I was just sort of like sucked into the vortex last night you and I do the same thing. I click around on CNN and Fox, and I'll watch the National, and then I'll go ahead and watch like BBC. I want to watch Al Jazeera. I want to watch like international news, see how stories are being covered, and all of them are showing these ICE agents, you know, and like, you know, wearing the vests with the rifles, like, you know, I don't know if they're busting down doors, but they're definitely showing up and hauling people out. And like, you know, I will say this, like with the press secretary, otherwise I see some of you commenting on the big crucifix she was wearing and everything. And I mean, she's sending a message. She sent a message for
100%,
sure. But I will
100%.
say this, like, Trump is doing what he said he was going to do. And he's doing what tens of millions of people elected him to do.
Yeah, but how? I want to hear logistics, because ICE can go in and arrest these people, but then do they sit in camps for months, you know, out in the sun or wherever, if they're down in Arizona or wherever they collect these people? And then how do you get all those people back to their country? Like, you shove them into train cars or on buses? I assume it's not going to be like you put them up at the Ritz or whatever, and then
I don't think so.
And then they're in a nice, you know,
Sounds
town
like
car down
detention
there.
camps.
It really and I don't think people, even the people who are in favor of this and who are screaming and foaming at the mouth, I don't think they understand the logistics and how this is going to look when pictures and video of this operation start happening. I mean, you have to have some sympathy, some empathy. You have to, like, these are human beings. And I think a lot of people who are involved in this just say, if you're illegal, get the fuck out. But like, these are families. These are men, women, children, right? Like,
on our live chat, Michael says last year in Biden's administration, they deported over 1 million people. They just didn't use the media to use fear as a tactic. Lauren says rich celebrities are going to wonder where their maids went. Noob Try Again says, I watched a video on the potential logistics and cost to deport all these people, and it'll be absolutely astronomical.
Yeah.
Also terrible, he says. There's that. Noob, we're looking forward to seeing you at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic tomorrow, pal. Is this true? Cactus Sheriff says, I saw a report of a Greyhound driver telling an ICE agent to, quote, earmuffs, kids, gargle my balls. When the agent wanted to board the bus, Greyhound has announced they will not allow ICE to raid their buses.
Wow.
Is that a thing? I'm going to have to Google that.
But while you are, I'll say this PNC bio comment is exactly what I'm talking about, because even my mind can't wrap around it. PNC bio says they're going to have to build a camp like the size of Salt Lake City. It's just incomprehensible. Stupid. Do you think you can build a city that big in 4 years? There's no way this is... Like, the numbers just don't add up. And I'm not like the smartest guy or a mathematician, but just in my mind, I'm like, there's no way this can happen logistically. There's no way you can move this many people in that short a time without really infringing on some human rights, right?
So AP, American Press, AP Seattle, reporting, this is 17 hours ago or so, Greyhound says it will stop letting Border Patrol agents conduct routine immigration checks on its buses. An X account at the Furrow says witnesses said a bus driver told an ICE agent to, gargle his balls when the latter requested to enter the bus. I honestly, when I woke up today, I didn't think I would say gargle his balls 3 times on Real Talk. I believe this is the first, second, and third time that I've ever said that on this show. Cactus Sheriff.
I'm enjoying it.
Controversially, perhaps, Cactus Sheriff, but we're going to award you 1 point on the Real Talk scoreboard for getting me to say that 3 different times on the show. I'm not so sure what's logistically involved here. As I Googled that.
Can you say it one more time while I font you on the screen here?
As I Googled gargle his balls to try to find the clip, to try to find the story. I did find, and I didn't actually Google those 3 words, but what I did Google is Greyhound, ICE, and something else. And what popped up is some interesting TikToks and posts. This one from a gal, I don't know this person, Abogada Lopez, appears to be an immigration lawyer. And this is, she's using her TikTok account, what to do, how employers can help employees in case of an ICE raid. Like, this is a real thing now that she's saying ask for the judicial warrant and this, that, and the other. This is kind of a wild, and then look at the first comment here from Sambo IM, says, push the employee down and point them out to the ICE agents. That's the best way to help. Okay. Jeez. This kind of sounds like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched a video on Anne Frank the other day, and I'm just kind of, I'm not comparing Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler. I don't think that's productive. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying having conversations about people being arrested in their workplaces and pulled out, and this new reality in the United States. It's what Americans voted for, and it's what Americans are going to get.
But that's why the Trump administration is trying to paint. How do you paint if he's saying 20 million people, which it's not. It's more like half that. But like, they're painting them as criminals, as thieves, as rapists, of people who are coming in and taking jobs from Americans, even though we know that the majority of the jobs these people are doing, Americans don't even want. They've tried to give it to them. Nah. They don't want it. They want .com jobs. They want, they want to be CEOs of fucking apps and shit. You know what I mean? But the majority of Americans don't want to do the jobs that illegal immigrants come here and take under the table for cash or whatever. So I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to paint these people and dehumanize them. But in my mind, I'm just like, the optics alone of this are going to drive people to change their opinion if and when they try to do this monstrous task.
How about this from Plaid Dad on the chat, who says the optics are going to convince people to self-deportation? Maybe.
Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised. And we've had conversations on the show, and we will have more about the implications for Canada and whether or not there will be a flood of people trying to cross into Canada. Ryu Street Fighter watching us live says the peacetime era after World War II is over. Didn't feel very peaceful after World War II, maybe in bits and chunks. But, I think of Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, go on and on and on, Rwanda, Bosnia. The peacetime era, says Ryu Street Fighter. I'm going to get an email about the ones I missed, by the way. After World War II is over, the world powers are realigning. Conflict is the historical norm. Most people just don't understand this yet. Canada needs to pick a side. And I do agree with Erica on this, who says, I think we can have a larger debate on who should be deported. Like, where there is no debate is that people being convicted of crimes should be deported. That's an absolute no-brainer. There's a huge difference between somebody that is illegally in the United States or Canada, that is a violent criminal, that is a career or habitual offender, versus somebody that's, has tried to do the best thing for their family and has contributed to the economy for many, many years and is raising kids. Well, there is a difference, obviously.
The majority of people, I would argue, I mean, I don't know for sure, but like, you don't say, I want to move to America. I want to go to America and take my family, my wife, my kids, whoever, my partner, my cousins, this large group of people. And then I want to commit a bunch of crimes so that I'm arrested and have to leave and cause agony and pain to my whole family. I would guess the majority of people are coming there because they're trying to escape peril. They're trying to escape poverty. They're trying to go somewhere that they see on TV where America is the American dream. And I know that's not the pretty picture for everyone who comes here. There are people who come here to Canada and to the States to do wrong, and they want and do crime. And yes, let's find these people and weed them out. But for me, like, I almost think that Trump is doing this, and he knows he's not, like you just said with Mo, he's not stupid. I think he looks at numbers and is like, there's no fucking way we can get 10, or if he's saying 20 million people out of the country in 4 years without like, shoving them all into like cattle trailers. Like, it's literally, maybe he just has it to deflect for 4 years, something to go back to when he wants to deflect from something else that's going on. He'll just keep saying, well, that's because these millions and millions of immigrants that we can't get out, and it's impossible, and Biden and his administration and Obama and everybody, they let them all in, and it's just a deflection thing, because in my mind it's impossible. It's just impossible.
It's obviously something that we'll continue to keep an eye on, and you can send us your thoughts anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com. It's like, I mean, it's like he's doing what he said he would do, and so
that doesn't mean we shouldn't improve border moving forward and get it figured out, not only here in Canada and the States. Let's fix border policy, how people walk in and out of countries. Like, let's do
I don't know how you are. I don't know how you argue against that, right?
No, and you can see the Canadian government. I mean, Rob Ford talking about it.
Doug,
sorry, I always say Rob. I'm
you
from
miss
Ontario.
Him.
And dude, he was such the whole TV spiel. R.I.P. He always gave us great content. But just in general, Doug was talking about the plan, and he's seen like the framing of it. And man, it's insane. Drones and all this new technology. Great. Yeah. Let's do all those things. Let's keep hardened criminals out of our countries. But just this whole thing that's going to happen with people. And Trump knows if this happens on TV and in front of cameras, it's not going to be good for him. It can't be good.
Oh, of course it is. This is what
violence against human beings and seeing families, being bussed.
It's what people want to see. It's what people want to see.
I don't want to see that.
January 6th, that's like I think that there is a huge faction of people who are not driven by compassion and empathy and necessarily. I mean, you got to be careful too when you start talking about common sense. Well, then you'll dig their heels in and you'll get into some argument about common sense is that when you have these issues, you address them, and this is how you address them directly. And Trump's not afraid to call a spade and whatever. So different people's definition of common sense goes in different directions. But I'm just saying this is what a lot of people want to see, and they're going to see it. And we'll continue to dissect it and talk about it on this show, in part fueled by your comments as well, and we sure appreciate those, and we invite them anytime. Leave a comment on this YouTube episode if you're watching us right now. We'd love to hear from you. We are starting to include YouTube comments in the flamethrower as well, so not just emails, which is kind of a way that we're leveling up that feature every Friday. I know. Franco, I see you in the live chat asking what's the stock. Where do you find Kirkland Lake on the stock market? Listen, Kirkland Lake Gold, you can find it on the TSX at KL. I'm not advising you to buy it, but I will say that just do whatever you want with it. Do whatever you want. Maybe the ship has sailed, but check this out, Johnny. Over the last 5 years, this stock's performance. It's trading at what is it right now? $49.71 a share. So about about $50 a share, approximately. It peaked. It was at its highest in mid-summer 2020 in the pandemic. It was up at $70. But look at this. Back when I was on the dive boat with Buddy, it was at $8. $8.
Jeez.
Every once in a while, you never know where it's going to find you. You get a stock tip on a dive boat, and you go ahead and you take the plunge, and there you go. I'm not endorsing that you buy this. I'm not endorsing that you take investment advice from me. But if you are looking for solid investment advice, North Road Investment Council is who we recommend wholeheartedly. We also wanted to put UCAN Youth Services on your radar. These amazing friends of ours who we are so proud to be partnering with, this nonprofit out of Edmonton, has their big comedy nights coming up in March. And if your family or your friend circle is like ours, you got to get these social things in the calendar early so everybody's going to be available, right? So ucan.ca, you click on comedy nights, or you can go directly to ucancomedy.com. You can book your night. Grab a table at 10. That's what I'm doing. We're getting our friends out together. We're doing a big group date night. It's going to be super fun. March 10th through the 12th or March 17th through the 19th. Great comedians. This is a great way to bring business partners, bring your best friends, bring folks that would love to support this amazing agency, this organization that provides mental health supports, employment resources, educational pathways for young adults in risky situations, folks aged 18 to 25 that just need an opportunity. UCAN Youth Services is doing amazing work, relentless work. You can learn more about their projects at ucan.ca. A shout out to our friends at Complete Care Restoration in communities and in individual home and businesses that have been impacted by fire, flood, black mold, sewer backups, and whatever else it is that's disrupting your regular life for more than 25 years. Complete Care Restoration's team of talented and certified professionals has been restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. Don't wait for damage to worsen. Contact Complete Care Restoration today and experience the peace of mind that comes with expert care. And John, this Saturday, February 1st, out at Larry Alexiak Field in St. Albert, everybody will be wondering, can Team Kubi Energy possibly defend their title as the Real Talk Pond Hockey Champions? That's right, Kubi won it all last year, an amazing sponsor of that tournament in support of 3 wonderful charities and an amazing partner at Real Talk. Kubi Renewable Energy is solar energy solutions to power your life. You can get a free quote today, or if you're interested in working in the green energy space, energy that is growing and growing more every year, you can check out the careers link at kubi.ca.
Kubi out there with their solar-powered hand warmers, and that's how they won. It's a leg up.
You know what drove me crazy is that people come, and by the way, this is a spectator-friendly event. We invite all of you, bring your kids. There's burgers from DQ, beers from our presenting sponsor, Molson Canadian. Bonfires will be ripping. We'll have a heated tent. You can check out hockey memorabilia. It is a vibe out there from 9:30. That's when the national anthem goes. Puck drop right after that, and then 3:30 we'll be wrapping it up. Larry Alexiak Field in St. Albert. But everybody brings a ringer, right? Like Ladislav Smid, a former Oiler, was out there last year. year. Somebody knew him and brought him out on their team. Everybody brings like these young kids that are still playing at like Nate and U of A and all these ringers. But Kubi won it. To their credit, every single player on their team was an actual employee of the company. So they didn't face any criticism for bringing in ringers. They were all Kubi employees all the way down the roster. Rosters of up to 6 people, and they won this thing. So we'll see if they can defend it this year. Noob says it is so much fun. The Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. It was so good to meet Noob in person. He said Laddie Smeed was nuts to watch. You forget how good these pros are, even years after they retire. So that's the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. As we wrap this episode today, we want to remind you, coming up on Friday's episode, we are going to be doing a live draw of the one team, that Pond Hockey Classic team. We don't know who it is yet, obviously. All of those that qualified for the early bird prize, the live draw on Friday's show will determine who has limo bus transport from the event itself to Rogers Place and 6 tickets to watch the Oilers host the Maple Leafs. It's McDavid versus Matthews. The draw goes Friday on Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.